Okay, hi everybody. Thank you for joining us on a Monday, slightly grey evening. So I want to introduce you to our fabulous, fairly recent graduates, well, the last 4 or 5 years. So we have Richard Dowker and Fraser Stannage. I've got a couple of little biographies just to quickly read to you before we're going to sort of just start chatting. And they've both put together a really fantastic presentation to show you some examples of their work and what they've been working on recently. So, so if you haven't read on the website, lucidmdx.co.uk, we've got Fraser Stannage, who graduated in 2016 from the BA Photography course. He produced a really beautiful final major project, as we called them in those days, which he made into a zine called Settle, and he's going to show you some examples of that. And how he put that together. During his time at Middlesex, he was working a bit of work experience for Boys by Girls magazine, and then went on to work for them doing their kind of social media presence and involved in a lot of production there. He then moved on to a company called Together Associates. You've been working there for 4 years now.
Nearly 4.
Nearly 4 years. So since, yeah, I think you said you went over in about February 2016. So he's been working as a producer, kind of coordinating photo shoots there, organising trips, studios, productions, that kind of thing. So he's going to talk to you a little bit about that. And also kind of pretty much designed their website as well. So he's going to show you the website, which he's done a really great job of. As well as that, we have Richard Dowker, who is a fashion and documentary photographer based in London. He graduated from Middlesex in 2015. His final major project was called Alone Together, which unpacked communication and companionship between gay individuals on dating apps and was nominated for the Magnum Graduate Photographers Award. He has since gone on to become a full-time freelance photographer, working with clients such as Vivienne Westwood, Dazed and Confused, Interview, GQ Magazine, Matches and Esquire. And he is also one of the co-founders of the free fashion and arts magazine called Super, and he's going to show you some physical copies of that. It's a really beautiful publication. So let's just make a start. So I think, Richard, you were going to start us off, being are we going age before beauty, or how are we doing this?
Well, I'm an old man now, so I'll go ahead.
So were you going to talk to us a little bit about your final major project on the slide, and then so you've got the full sharing rights. There you go, beautiful.
Okay. That's my name. So yeah, basically, my final major project, which I'm not sure what it's called now, professional portfolio.
Very good, well done. Excellent.
So basically, it was kind of inspired by the second year identity project, where at the end of first year, I went through like a breakup of like a long-term relationship, and I'm originally from Cumbria up in the sticks, and it was kind of like adjusting to single life, and also single life in a city from growing up in the countryside. And I started to like use apps and stuff like that to meet up with people for like dating and stuff like that, because I'm a bit timid compared to some gays in this day and age. And then I met up with one person, and they were completely like, they were the same person, but how they portrayed themselves online was not how they portrayed themselves well in real life. And I felt like that was quite interesting to play around with the identity of it. So I did that for that project, and then I've used the apps to kind of cast people and kind of like interview people, and went around to their homes, took photos of them in their homes, and yeah, like collected like imagery and like still lives. And this was it, which is spanned over about probably 2.5 years, and then I did like a little bit after uni, and then I'd like to go back to doing more, but I don't know when, because of Corona, when that will be physically possible. But yeah, some of them are some of my favorite images of like old time, and it's hard to like kind of compete with them. So I always look back at them and I'm like, damn, that's they're still some of my favorite images. So I do want to go back to do that project at some point.
And did you approach
then,
with the idea of just contacting people saying you wanted to photograph them, and how did they respond to that kind of?
Yeah, basically I had this like, because kind of on Grindr there's this thing. Well, I ended up paying for Grindr Extra just so I could use this thing called saved messages, and just spammed loads of people with the same message saying, hey, I'm Richard, I'm doing a project on what was the whole spiel? It was how the gay community has kind of like adapted and kind of like adapted around technology and dating apps, and if the idea of like social media and these dating apps have like hindered or like brought us together or kind of isolated us further apart. And then majority of people were interested, like, because I think gays are quite vain, and a lot of them like their photos being taken. But yeah, I only had like a few like off comments and stuff like that. It was probably about like 70% of people were like, or 80% of people were interested. Some people didn't reply, and like some people were like discreet or just weren't interested at all. But it was quite quite well received project from people, and I managed to get a good amount of people. But I think there's like a lot more genres in the gay community that I could research and kind of like
There's
like
definitely a lot of
document.
subcultures you could take it
Yeah,
into.
that's what I was going to go into like next, when I like go into different tribes and groups and stuff like that, and like different kind of like, yeah, just different subcultures, and kind of, because there's people, and also I really wanted to like go into like people who are discreet, people who are trans, people who are into different fetishes. Like there's so many different kind of weird and, well, not weird because I can't say weird because it's just people's preferences.
So the thing is, you don't feel like the project finished when you finished your degree, so there's still a lot of legs for you to continue it.
Yeah, there's definitely, I want to go back to it because I feel like diversity wise, like I didn't really like a lot. It's harder to get like a lot of I've shot like a guy called he went by the name DX, and he's black, and he said that it would be hard for me to get more black people because in their culture a lot of like their families are kind of, well, some won't be openly out and they might not be open to doing photo shoots. So I still want to try and get a bit more of a diversity within it, which may be more challenging, but I still think I think I need to, like, especially with everything that's going on, like try and push that within my work, and try and do my bit for Black Lives Matter in my personal and commercial work. And then from this project, I entered a few images into like the Taylor Wessing, but it didn't really, anything like came from that. But I got nominated for the Magnum thing, and a friend of mine, well, a good friend of mine now, Daniel Damas, who's a stylist, messaged me on Instagram, I think it was, after seeing the project, and then asked if I was ever interested in doing like fashion work. And then that was like, I was always interested in fashion work, but whilst I was at uni, I kind of went back to documentary and kind of enjoyed the kind of like learning the fundamentals of like documentary from like, I think my final major project was like with Steve and Eva, and getting in the dark room and scanning and stuff like that, and I miss all the dark room days. And then I went yeah, now I've gone like back to sort of fashion, and I kind of missed the kind of documentary documentary
You
stuff now.
still shoot film a lot though, don't you? That's kind of your
it's kind of like ingrained into me. I sometimes have to shoot like digital, but most of my stuff's always on, like everything on this PowerPoint thing is film. So after uni, I kind of like went on to working at a studio called Ryda with a few of my friends at the time. And we were allowed to use the studios when it was empty. And when, with the stylist I just mentioned, Daniel, we started like collaborating quite a lot at the studio, and doing all these kind of like little tests and stuff like that. And then eventually started doing like odd editorials and stuff like that here and there, and like building up a portfolio, because through the assisting at the studio you can meet like other photo assistants and then get on to like other jobs and stuff like that, or like meet stylist assistants, hair and makeup assistants. And then I kind of like built like a friendship circle, and like people who were wanting to like build their own work as well as assist in their spare time. And I started doing like more projects like this and like editorials, and yeah.
Just to touch on that with you, Richard, that's something we were talking about earlier, is that like if you get into one of those situations, those kind of people who are also like assisting or doing that other kind of stuff, they want to work with other people because they want to be able to make work. So, you know, you kind of
it's quite an integral thing, isn't it, to get to know the other assistants of other makeup artists, hairstylists. Yeah,
it's good to start networking, like and just chatting and being open to people. Like a lot of people on sets can be quite nervous to talk, and like it's quite cold. Like it is like a bit weird. Like some people are like the stereotypes of the fashion industry and quite like cold and cutthroat and don't want to have any time of day. But then some people it's just like you start chatting to them and you make like great friends. Like I've made great friends throughout the industry. And yeah, I think at Ryda I like learned a lot of like lighting stuff and like the production values and stuff like that just general experience after uni like teaches you, and then just like because everyone who's assisting is kind of like at your like around your level, and not everyone wants to be like an assistant forever and wants to do their own work. So people are like interested in collaborating and like
exactly
their own work.
They just want to make that next step, don't they, from sort of assisting into practicing in them. Or you would test as much as you could at studios when the studios were empty of commercial jobs, is that right? And then you were working for a model agency as well, weren't you?
Oh yeah, I forgot that one. I was working at Wilhelmina Models at the time, and I was doing all the tests in house for not that great a pay, but I work with them still now for like a normal pay. But I was like fresh out of uni, so I kind of like, and I was working at Ryda, so I had that kind of like income coming in from Ryda, so I didn't mind doing the lower fee because I had the studio space and I was also getting free models and they were covering my film as well. So I was essentially just getting a free portfolio as well of like models. So I was helping them out and they were helping me out. So I didn't mind it, but I would never be like scared. Like that's one thing I was a bit scared of at uni. Like probably nowadays it's much more accessible, but I was a bit scared to like contact agencies for models and kind of like I felt like I wasn't as confident, and I felt like I was wasting their time and like not gonna get any good models, like but once you start reaching out, it's just like some agencies might not be as like as open to you at first, but as long as you show you're persistent and like, well, I feel like that's in this industry, you have to be persistent to keep like at it, because a lot, like I've had to do like a lot of hard work. Like it's a lot about hard work and a little bit of luck, and like yeah,
I think that's quite a clever thing that you did, because you obviously were a bit concerned and nervous about approaching different model agencies to get models, and so instead you just got right in there and started working for them, which then gave you potentially a pick of the best, you know, and the kind of the new faces that were coming in. You would see them, and so you'd get to kind of get in touch with them and then organise test shoots. And I think that's a brilliant way of getting around that loophole, that difficulty.
Yeah, and there was such a nice like team of people. Like they're like it was just about, I think it was about, it wasn't like a full year, it's just under a year probably, but it was like I met a load of like really great models and great, like met some well, I met there's Abby Douglas who worked there, who within the year above me at Middlesex. I think she was in what was the fashion communication, what was the other
fashion communication styling, FCS.
Yeah. I can't remember that title.
We can't be expected to remember it. It was 5 years ago, so don't worry.
Yeah, I'm so old. And yeah, so I basically met her. Like I met her through uni, but met her properly at Wilhelmina, and we got on really well, and and then
she started styling for your shoots. So you kind of had that Middlesex link, did you? To say how I used to...
No, she was a booker at Wilhelmina. So she was like one of the agents, and she worked there with a guy called Theo Spencer as well, who also went to Middlesex. And
it's all about keeping it in the family, definitely.
Yeah, it's kind of like a small world, because I didn't realise until afterwards that we all went to Middlesex together. But yeah. And then
so you then went freelance in 2019. Was that during this time or before?
So this was about 2018. 2018, most of it. And then I was still at Ryda because I was still using the studios. And then from doing all this, I got approached by Vivian Westwood's team to do a social media campaign. So it's like from all the stuff so going back to like all this kind of like portraiture in the studio, they liked this kind of like really empty space, kind of like very warm toned kind of studio work I've been doing with like interesting like subjects and stuff and styling, and wanted me to get on board and do the same for them, which was really nice. It was kind of like my first time of working with a big stylist team, and I was it was the first time that I was kind of like a bit overwhelmed with like of being like on a shoot. I remember we were talking last week, and you were saying that when you were shooting and there was like a whole team behind you, there was like producers and like there's the hair, makeup and stylists and assistants, and it was kind of like a bit that everyone was there for you, and it was a bit overwhelming, but it was quite exciting at the same time. And it's kind of like a learning curve, because I didn't really know about budgets and like how much to charge and stuff like that. And it's still a grey area in the industry, because you never know how much to charge, and don't want to scare clients away.
You had to kind of develop and scanned and everything, didn't you? Did you do a lot of scanning?
Yeah, I did a lot of the so that on my website there's like 20 more images, but I actually like scanned and edited like probably up to like nearer 50 because I was just trying to like do the absolute most, which is ridiculous, because I just didn't know. Like they were just like saying, yeah, this is it. Like they highlighted all the images that they liked, so I did them all. And it was a bit overkill, because I was actually meant to go on holiday with my mum for a birthday present to me, and I was in Tenerife in the evenings, because it's our guilty pleasure from a childhood holiday that we had when I was little. and I was editing like every evening, just doing more and more Vivienne Westwood images. So yeah, there's like, I do love these images as well, but it's kind of like a big learning curve of what to have limits on a job, because also that clients don't always pay very quickly. And that's a thing that you need to get used to, because it's a sad part of the industry, because it's just people take, like, there's a lot of the time the magazines or the clients that have the most money, like, are the ones that are harder to get the money from.
Yeah,
they'll query a digit in your invoice and then take another 3 months to pay you, sort of scenario. So you have to kind of be gently keep, reminding them to get,
There are like late fees and stuff like that you should research, and also all your like kind of legal work, which is very helpful. You can like charge like it's only like £70, but sometimes if you fret in the £70, they usually pay quite instantly afterwards. But it's just a bit of a shame that it has to come to that at times.
So you have to be really on top of your invoicing, don't you, and kind of date everything and record when you've sent it, and then if 30 days come along, you send it again with a gentle kind of reminder that, and then another 30 days and until you get paid.
Like an Excel sheet, which like I try and fill and keep up to date with like what date I've sent it, and then chased and all sorts of like different colors.
Yeah, really good. So this is Martine, who used to teach at Middlesex, actually, and she's now a very successful fashion designer. Tell us about this shoot.
Yeah, so basically after like that project with Vivienne, like I did start to get more like opportunities for magazines and stuff like that. So this was kind of like going back to like documentary. There's a little video and there's more images online of this project. So I was kind of like asked to document Martine Rose's like collection a few years ago, like the casting and the behind the scenes of it being made. So it was a really nice, like intense kind of like couple of days. And it was the first time I'd like done like a video, which is very rusty. I wouldn't say I'm a videographer by all means. Like I love video and I'd love to get more into it, but yeah, it's a whole different ball game. And yeah, I met Martine, who's absolutely lovely, and her whole team, styling, casting, everyone. And then went backstage on Fashion Week, and it was set in this kind of like residential street in London, and it was just the production was amazing. It was just, and I kind of like that aspect of like backstage work, because it is kind of like fashion and also a bit of documentary, and some people don't really like doing backstage. I was a bit scared to do it at first, because it is kind of like a cutthroat kind of, there's people like barging for a shot, or like will steal your shot, and you'll
I was going to say, I think if you can get in and do something like this, where you're a little bit more in with the designer rather than being like hardcore on the catwalk, you can definitely like get a lot from it. And I think a lot of people,
a bit more personable, isn't it? A lot of people want to see this kind of behind the scenes. You want to know the workings of the fashion designer's studio, and it's intriguing, and it's very different, isn't it, to just seeing the catwalk shots. And
it's kind of like interesting to see that the whole build up of a show, which like the whole production, like months or weeks, and it's only like a 10-minute show, and the amount of money that goes into it. Like Martine is like, well, she's doing amazing. Like she's not as like not a huge mega budget, but there is a lot of money that goes into these shows. And yeah, it was just like fascinating to kind of see the kind of like
the whole process.
Then so I did like a few like projects with Document Journal of like musicians. So there's like Vegan, who's a producer, and Muramasa, and then this woman called Virgin Maria, who's a DJ. He's very pro body and pro nudity. He's battled Instagram filter being blocked many a time, and people protesting for her art. And she was like, I really like Document Journal because they allow me to meet really interesting like talents and just such characters that I wouldn't always meet. And yeah, they're just amazing. Like I've met like some great people through it, and it's always interesting to like photograph and see how it turns out. I think
and again, that was all in the studio. That was in Ryda.
No, this was so this was after I went freelance. Now I think, yeah, during this I was freelance. I think I was still at the studio but part-time here. I started to like dwindle time down when I started getting my own work, but it's always good to have like kind of regular job to kind of, because freelance is kind of regular. It's kind of like I wouldn't have been able to pay rent or without like the like 2 days a week at Ryda or something like that I was doing.
So you made a gradual transition into working for yourself. Yeah. It's a really good way of doing it.
Starting to get like more. I wasn't as always available, so I slowly like dwindled down like my time there, and they understood, and then just slowly came to an end. And yeah, I've been like back a couple times to shoot some stuff, which is one of the shots I did for my magazine Super. I'll go into later.
So tell us about Super magazine. Is this have we got?
Well, that's more commercial. Head of the slideshow. But yeah, basically I just did more editorials and kind of like interviews for Esquire magazine, and like this Mark Leckie, he's an amazing artist. He was in the Tape Britain last year, and he did this life-size model of a motorway bridge. I don't know if anyone saw it. But he does these amazing like videos of like and photo projects I think in the 90s of like youth culture up in Liverpool, of like raves and stuff like that, and he does these amazing videos, and he wanted to be shot under this bridge in Epping, so we went out to Epping and did these photos. Then I've done some more editorials for Burberry, for GQ.
So are these like advertorials, kind of working with?
That was kind of like an advertorial, yeah. That was like a special, because it was I think Riccardo Tisci's first collection, so they did like a special shoot. And then did this for Interview magazine. Is an actor, Kamal Nanjiani. He did Silicon Valley and a few other things, and he's in the new Marvels thing. And he was quite like nerdy and like a very stereotypical nerd, and quite podgy like a few years ago. And then he went through this massive like bulk up, and like he broke the internet like on Twitter, and when he like showed his new body, and like the Twitter went mental. And yeah, then we did this shoot, and kind of like jokingly like be a bit tongue in cheek about like kind of like men's health kind of magazine shoots and stuff like that.
See, I can see how your Alone Together project sort of brought this kind of work your way, because it showed that you've got that kind of versatility. You can work with different people, different sort of body shapes, and that's that's not an issue for you at all, and that you're able to kind of work with I think that's kind of a really nice way of seeing that. I can definitely see this sort of transition of your work, and it kind of crosses
Yeah, I've done like a lot more studio work now, and I do miss the kind of like going into people's homes, and that's something I do miss. And it's like either you have like a lot of time and no money being freelance, or you have no time and money or you're waiting on invoices and stuff like that, and it's just kind of like finding time to do your own freelance, like your own personal work during freelance. It's quite hard, so I do need to make more time for myself and my own projects. Still,
yeah, that's really important.
Even 5 years, like it's still like hard to kind of like find that balance and like the ability, like I think we said in the chats before, about saying like no to things. And because at first I was trying to say yes to everything whilst I was at Wilhelmina, whilst I was at Ryda, and I was working so much and editing like all the time and scanning stuff all the time. I didn't give myself a bit of like time to breathe, because I just didn't want to, I don't know, I wanted to do well and like just prove myself, and probably was a bit too harsh on myself. So yeah, but then I've always been a bit.
Sometimes you can direct your work more in a direction that you want it to go in if you actually just have the courage to say no to something.
Yeah. So then this was probably like this was this year. But then this was probably like about like when I was going more freelance and doing my own stuff. For like I've done stuff for matches, stuff for brands for like Farfetched, and other like online boutiques. And then this is the Super magazine. So I'll jump off the cam and show you the actual issue. But yeah, me and 3 other friends. So there's me, my flatmate, and like we've lived together for 2 and a bit years. He's a journalist and a consultant, and he works at ID and a lot of other magazines. And my friend Ryan Cahill and Stefan Abrahams, who worked at Man About Town and Wonderland, and they all left Wonderland, and we all kind of like wanted to do our own thing. So we started this magazine Super, which is kind of like a free magazine. It's stocked in Dover Street Market, Selfridges. There's a list and I can't remember.
You can get them online as well, can't you? You can order them.
Oh yeah, you can get them on Depop. I'm not good at plugging stuff. But I will show you the magazine when I go off like off the screen share. So we kind of like, this is the first issue with Maisie Williams. I shot her at Ryda, so this was probably the last time I shot at Ryda. I haven't shot there since for a while, because they moved studios, and I haven't really needed the studio space. Either we have used other studios, or like a client's wanted to use a different studio or something like that, more budget wise. And yeah, so I shot Maisie, and she was like super helpful. We did like an online, and we did like a launch party in a hotel in London, and she used her kind of like her
connections
to kind of like help us out and like get us a location for free, by sharing it on Instagram with her like millions of followers. And she has like a company called Daisy that's kind of like an online platform for like creatives that I check out as well, because it's a good way of like networking amongst creatives, and like meeting people that way as well. And she like sponsored the magazine as well, and helped us out a lot. And then in America for LA, we did like, so basically, I'll explain it a bit more and then show you the first issue. So each like cover was like it folded out and was like a poster. So, and then I did one cover, and then Daria Rich did another cover in LA. So it's this child actor, Sunny Sulyk, and he's like was in this film called Mid-90s, which is a skater film, and we got him interviewed by Tony Hawk, which is quite fun. And I really love that shoot. So we try and kind of like commission like up and coming new photographers, and it's quite a small, like, we're only in our second issue. This was one of the fashion shoots I did, and then this is the new issue with a singer called Ryan Beatty, that I did one cover, and then in LA, Lindsay Ellery did a cover of Haim. And yeah, so it's kind of like change format. I'll stop the share now because that's the end, I think.
There's 4 of you that have created this.
Yes, yeah, so me, Stefan Abrahams is art director. He works now at Vogue,
He's really
and Ryan, he's at Hunger Magazine at the moment, and we all do like super in our spare time. So we haven't started issue 3 because of Corona, so we don't know when we'll be able to start shooting and stuff like that. So yeah, this is like, it's like this big magazine, and it like each cover story. Well, for the first issue, each cover story came out like this, and it was like a sleeve, and then it opens up as a big poster. I don't know if I can.
Yeah, fabulous. Everyone loves a poster.
Yeah.
Right.
And then like the cut sheet was on the other side of it. And then yeah, so each cover story was like a poster. So it was like this as well. It's not the easiest to show. And then I really liked the kind of like that way of like showing the magazine, and like we like playing around with different kind of like mediums. But the second issue we had to like, for budget, we did get like funding for this as well, but not as much, so we had to kind of like do it more of a simpler way. So we just did like one cover and 2 covers on the back, and then it's got like a little poster inside as well, and then we kind of like, it's kind of like a mixture of like art and like music and film. The latest issue is more focused on music, and yeah, so it's kind of like
it's a free publication. It's a free magazine. But how do you sort of support it then? So you're getting sponsorship, are you, through advertising?
Yeah, so we had like a sponsor from a brand called Coach last issue, because it was through because we had like the talent Heim wearing their clothes. They'd pay for the issue to be printed, and yeah, like luckily we can like use our contacts and like PR relations and kind of like make money that way.
Mm-hmm.
They do it quite a lot through branded content, as you can do quite a lot like branded content as well. So I'll touch on my magazine experience in a bit, but when we, like, there were certain shoots that we did, and they were all one brand, and then the brand would pay, similar to Richard's situation of, you know, they would then contribute towards either the printing or the distribution. Like they would give you X amount of money to be able to then.
That's a good way of doing it. So you have one brand per issue, effectively, and they
or more. You know, you just have kind of a whole story that may be, you know, one specific brand, and you know, because the emphasis on that whole story being one brand, then they'd be up for paying for that, along with, you know, more like hard advertising that you get in the front or back of a magazine.
Yeah.
Yes. But to be honest, Richard knows better, probably more than I do on that.
Well, no, it's still a learning curve for us as well. Like we, in the first issue, because it's always hard to, like, if you want to start like in it like a magazine, first issues are always like notoriously hard to get any like advertising. So it was lucky that we had Maisie for that. So the second issue was quite difficult, but we managed to get the brand coach to. So we had to provide like 2 images, at least 2 images of like them in full like coach clothing, and they gave us a lump sum, and then it's finally come through like a few weeks back. So so we had to. It's the good thing is there's 4 of us, so we can split costs and like help each other out.
Do you all obviously collaborate on the magazine and you do the photography, but do you get involved in the design and the layout as well of the publication?
Stefan's main one who does like all the graphic design, and he's like great. He's amazing at that sort of stuff, and me and him work on the art direction kind of things and commissioning photographers. And Douglas and Ryan, they use their they get like a lot of like, they know like the music PRs and film PRs, and they get like things like previews up front, so they know like new talent that's up and coming. So they like talent cast it. I don't know if that's the right term, but yeah, they kind of like cast the issue as well. So yeah, it's kind of like a teamwork.
And that thing of you being all friends anyway, you've all got the same sort of ethos about how you want to work, and ultimately, you know, if you couldn't get your work into certain magazines, you created your own. And
so it's kind of like, there is like, I can't remember, someone said like a great saying, like if you don't have your own stage, like if there isn't a stage for you, like make your own stage. So so
brilliant.
We're still, we need to start working on issue 3. So but if you
and when are you hoping? You have no idea of sort of time frame for the next issue?
We've tried to like, it's basically we were going to try and do it biannually, but we don't know. A lot of issues are like, a lot of magazines are doing like these online Zoom shoots and stuff like that, and we might have to do that sort of thing, or hopefully, like, because of lockdowns like kind of easing now, you can do social distance shoots, so we'll see. Like, hopefully we can start thinking about it and like meeting up in the next month or so, to just discuss ideas and kind of like a theme for the issue, but yeah.
Well, fingers crossed. I think it's brilliant you've put it together. So, and I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about how you're kind of going into the industry now and the sort of things that you're experiencing, because you've done a shoot, didn't you, last week? But I think we'll come back to that, because I just want to move on to, because this is a nice moment to move on to Fraser's final major project.
No, I'm joking.
So you're in the hot seat. You might have to speed up a little bit, because this is all.
That's okay. I mean, I'm not.
Well, I don't know. I'm not in any hurry, but I don't know about others. So.
Okay, let me just see if I can.
Are you going to show Settle, or are you going to do that after?
Oh yeah, I can show you first. Bear with me 1 second. So I kind of, moving on from Richard's, obviously his has become a vanity project of a team of people that's actually become kind of like quite successful, and he's built it as a thing in its own right. My final major project was a little zine called Settle. I think in maybe end of first year, kind of was like, not sure I want to be a freelance photographer. I was a bit too much of a wuss to feel like I'd want to go freelance. Like I needed that kind of security of maybe having something else. So I kind of toyed with the idea of being a picture editor, which was partly influenced by working at a magazine, which I'll touch on in a bit. But yeah, essentially it was kind of like, well, if that's not what I want to do, then I might as well kind of like look at, I'll show you these slides in a second on Zoom, but on the presentation. But it just basically gave me a platform to be able to, one, shoot, but also kind of start laying out work and work in print a little bit more, just as a form of practice. And it also gave me a way of being able to kind of split the final year up, because I knew that if I didn't have if I didn't break it down into micro projects, I would have really struggled. Right, let me just share my screen.
You did several versions of that, didn't you? That Settle.
Yeah, I think I've got them all here. I don't know how many iterations there actually was though, but I think there was about 5. Mm-hmm. Yeah, as I said, it's quite a while ago now. Let me just see if I can go full screen. Can you guys see all okay?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to see if I can go full screen.
Go on view. I think it's on view.
View. Full screen mode.
1 down.
2 down. Keep going.
Oh, there we go. Yep. I'm being all right now. Oh wow, this is going. There we go. Can you guys also see okay?
Yep.
So again, this is like one of the spreads that I showed you guys, but yeah, it was kind of, as I was saying, it gave me a real chance to break down the project into kind of like 6-week increments, and allow me to focus a little zine on every one. So for example, I did one where this was from one of the later ones, shot in Berlin. I kind of went out there. I had a trip planned, like a mini holiday with a girl who I'd interned with at Boys for Girls again, which I'll touch on in a sec. And yeah, we ended up having loads of models come to the apartment that we stayed in for the week. And I genuinely thought they were gonna fall out of that window. I was hanging out of one window and they were hanging out of another. So yeah, my levels of anxiety doing that for the German models' lives for a moment was a little bit scary. But yeah, again, it was like really about the pairings, and working towards kind of doing something at the end of uni was as important about actually just taking pictures for me. So, you know, doing these layouts of, you know, having these leading lines. These were actually two of the images, probably a few of the images in the final zine that were actually taken during the same shoot or taken at in the same place, both in the same kind of hallway. But it was kind of like playing with these lines. Again, the idea of this kind of alleyway creating this square, and then the fridge in the other image was a bit of a play on that layout. It just gave me a really good opportunity to kind of see my own work in print, and you know, being able to produce something regular and get constant feedback on my work. Like, you know, I'm sure there will be situations where you guys will be able to show your work a lot to people after, and even if you've just got something small and printed, I kind of rather embarrassingly actually still sometimes carry this around in my backpack.
I'm glad. Very glad.
Only because, and I tell you why, it was actually when someone's like, oh, so what do you do? Or like, how did you get here? Or especially with some of the photographers that I look after, you know, you meet these people, and to them, I'm just, you know, I'm an agent and I'm a producer, but I don't think people always necessarily see straight away that you've got a creative background. So sometimes I kind of, after a little while of getting to know them, I whack that out and they're kind of pleasantly surprised that I'm actually like somewhat sufficient with a camera, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really physical to leave somebody with as well. So it's like, you know, can I leave you with
Yeah,
this?
100%.
Yeah.
It's definitely had it's definitely been pulled out of the bag many times after a couple of drinks.
always carry them everywhere you go.
Yeah. And then just wanted to touch on Loop, which you guys obviously know as Lucid now, just because this is what I kind of spent a lot of time doing in my third year as well. Again, it was like another outlet for me to be able to work with other people from other courses, kind of collaborate with people on my own course, but also, again, an opportunity for me to be able to practice potentially what I wanted to go into, which obviously quite hilariously I didn't actually end up doing, but I will get to that. But you know, just being able to kind of think about, okay, how can I focus my mind into maybe what I want to do? You know, even if you just want to be freelance as a photographer, just, you know, being able to think, okay, well, I'm going to go and do a shoot today, or oh, let me go and speak to so and so, and we'll maybe just do a little something together. Just like keeping going, I think is like really, really important.
And you collaborated with a graphic design student.
Yeah, so I had a guy who was a graphic designer on another course, who was friends with some of the photographers on my course, and who we actually got quite close, and I did with about 6 to 8 other people, but mainly it was me and him and just a couple of the others working solely on all the layout, and you know, all the others kind of contributed by pulling interviews together and stuff, but predominantly the layout I did solely with him. And yeah, it just again gave me a kind of bit of an eye opener, because I had no idea about graphic design before. He had me reading, there's a book called Rule of Thirds, I think I've got it over there. Or no, I can't remember what it's called. It's called The Magic Golden Triangle or something.
Yeah,
I can't remember what it's called.
Well, I think.
And it was all to do with, yeah, like kind of rule of thirds of like how to lay out things. And he kind of got me reading that, and you know, kind of gave me a bit of an insight onto how I could lay out my own work, as well as obviously I was laying out others. And then this is my first work experience, which actually came before doing Settle. I just wanted to kind of like keep everything like in chunks in terms of like my experience and then what we'd done for our project. But this is a magazine, a menswear magazine, which hilariously, I love that Gavin, you're on this call today, because Gavin very kindly introduced me to Cecilia, who ran the magazine at the time. She'd come in to do a talk to the fashion communication and styling students, and she was just in the building, and I'd been looking at the magazine. I'd researched it as part of my project, because it was kind of, I was really interested in these like smaller fashion magazines that might have been a bit more accessible than rather you know, your Vogues, your IDs. I think they're really important to kind of look at, even if you don't go and buy them, because you know they are very expensive. But even if you go into somewhere like Artwords, which is in Shoreditch, or Magma in Covent Garden, and just you know, kind of go in and have a feel and just soak up some of the content, that's really, really good. It can often be kind of like a really good way to just drive yourself or get a bit of inspiration again. But yeah, so Gavin had Cecilia in, and he was showing her the rest of the building. Came down to the dark room, and I was busy like printing something. Anyway, so he was like, "Oh, this is Cecilia. She runs Boys by Girls magazine," and I kind of was like a little bit starstruck at the time, and ended up plucking up the courage to go and ask her for an internship. And so yeah, in the second year, summer second year, I spent. She usually did like 3-month internships, but I ended up staying for like nearly 5. I think it's probably like quite interesting to touch on, maybe just saying like, don't be afraid to speak to people. I know I'm quite confident speaking, but I was so nervous to go and speak to Cecilia, even though she's like the nicest person ever. I was so nervous because Gavin had already walked off with her by the point that I suddenly thought, oh, well, maybe I can ask her for an internship. So I had to go and chase after them in the Grove and find them.
Running around.
Yeah, and then he was like, I was like, oh, I was really hoping, because I spotted him, and I was like, oh, I was hoping if I could maybe speak to Cecilia about an internship. And I thought, because he was by himself, that I'd got away with it, and then I didn't have to ask. But then he was like, oh no, she just pop to go and get a drink of water or something. So then it was suddenly like, oh my god, no, actually I haven't got a get out of jail free card just yet. But honestly, like, don't be afraid to ask people. All they can do is say, and you know, they're not going to be like, no, you can't. They're going to, you know, there will be a reason for maybe why they won't be able to do it, whether it's financial or they've already got interns. But just make sure that you, even if you can, if you're obviously speaking to someone in person, which may be a little bit more limiting obviously due to coronavirus at the moment, just stay in touch with those people and see if you can get their emails, just because, you know, that they may be willing to have a conversation further down the line. Just at this point in time, it may not be suitable for them. But also just be really like willing to try new things out. Yeah, Boys by Girls was a bit of an eye-opener for me, again, and kind of helped me solidify wanting to do something. I think, and Richard, you might probably feel the same as me, like even if you've done certain experiences, it can at least just tell you what you don't want to do, even if you don't end up enjoying it. You know, I've been in some situations where actually I did do a magazine internship later when I graduated, and I didn't then enjoy it, just because it was a different working environment. I think maybe how I kind of fell into working together. Again, Cecilia, she was actually a photographer in her own right, and she worked at the agency. I'll go back to that in a sec. I couldn't remember what the next slide was. She was also a photographer at the agency. And, you know, I'd kind of graduated, had my final major project, done the degree show, everything. And I'm like, oh my god, I don't know what to do. And I, kind of spent time emailing people, maybe being a little bit too nervous or spending too much time worrying about who I was going to email instead of just doing it.
And actually, the thing that came up for you was just being in the digital darkroom and striking up a conversation with somebody.
Yeah. And yeah, so she actually then popped up, and it was about 3 months after I graduated. So I was kind of got to that point where I was a little bit like, haven't really heard a lot back, but you know what, whatever. And she'd messaged me and been like, oh, I've got an opportunity, possible opportunity for you. My agent is looking for an intern. And I was like, I have no idea what this means. I have no idea who an agent, like what an agent is. And I'm not going to go too much into it today, just because obviously you've got James Gerard Jones on tomorrow, and he will be able to elaborate a little bit more, I think. And actually, funnily enough, he actually came up to me on my degree show. So again, I think it's really good for you to speak to him and ask questions, because he's in more of a senior position than me. But he was actually the one that came up to me at my degree show and was like, we'd been talking, or we'd had, the crits, or where they look at your work. Alison, remind me, have you guys done that yet? Or
they did them on Friday. Yeah, portfolio reviews. Yeah, we did them like this.
And he came up to me and he actually said to me about maybe I'd be good at being a producer. Again, no idea.
Did he really? At the degree show?
Yeah. Wow. He put me in touch with someone who I had a meeting with, that kind of creative agency. Nothing came of it, but again, I met those people, and it's somewhere in my head, those people that I met, I know what that agency do. I know what kind of thing they have. So again, you just end up becoming like a sponge of everything in the industry.
Soak up bits of information, and suddenly these names will kind of reappear later on.
Yeah, 100%. So anyway, I went to the interview, had no idea really what I was going to be doing, and then met my boss, or met the director of the company, and we just hit it off straight away. And she was kind of like, oh, I've heard that you've been doing like running Boys by Girls' like Instagram and like social media. And at the time, Cecilia was Instagram was like a thing, but it wasn't what it is now. It was just kind of gathering traction. Like people were using it, but not in the way that they use it as a commercial tool now. And it was kind of really just suddenly people realized that they could really promote themselves on it. So I'd spent a lot of time doing social media, which to you guys now might be a little bit different, because everyone's so well versed in Instagram. And I don't even think stories were a thing back then. The Instagram stories didn't exist. Making me feel old now.
So Boys by Girls is fundamentally boys shot by female photographers. Is that right?
Yeah, in layman's terms.
Clues in the name, obviously, but I just wanted to clarify.
So then got on really well with well with the woman. She was like, well, why don't you come and have kind of spend like 3 months with us and see. And I just never left. Is the best way to put it. I started in August, and then around Christmas, it was kind of around three months until Christmas. I remember just being at the Christmas party, or kind of like our Christmas do, whatever we were doing. And she was like, yeah, just don't leave. It's fine. Stay longer. And then it got to, I think maybe February 2019. I was still interning. I actually had a retail job on the side. Again, I think a little bit like Richard, we both were kind of like a little bit careful about having kind of like a bread and butter job just to pay the bills, and then have something on the side. And when I originally wanted to be a picture editor, I thought, oh, I can be a picture editor part-time, and then I can do my photography on the side. Again, like hasn't been what I've done, but I think we still both did those things. And and then it kind of got to the point where I was like, I need to be having a conversation about maybe having a job or like proper salary, because I've been here a long time now. And yeah, I kind of plucked up the courage and said to her, look, would you be willing to take me on properly? Because, you know, I'm working a lot now. My responsibilities had increased from just doing social media to running the website and kind of shadowing on jobs and on productions. And I felt like I kind of, at that point, I deserved to be paid for my time, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. You'd fully
yeah,
done
I mean,
your time.
like 8 months.
Now you carved out you sort of
actually,
created a role for yourself, didn't you? There,
yeah,
the website and everything.
Yeah, I mean, so it was Kate and John who were Kate and John knew each other from before. Kate started the agency. John is a kind of senior agent, been in the industry about 10 years. And then, yeah, I kind of started as the intern, but very quickly kind of shadowed what was going on in the agency and had to pick up like when the agency got busier and busier. And gradually started going on my own meetings. This job I thought might be interesting to put in. One of Charlotte Haddon's. You can go and have a little, I think because we're running a little bit tight for time, I might not show you the website today. I mean, I'm not running tight for time, but if we get time, once I've finally shut my mouth, I might show you the website, but if not, I'm sure you guys can go and have a look at the website and look at all the work. But this shoot came about from me going and having meetings in New York. So about a year and a half into getting experience or being it together, my boss kind of said like maybe we could, you know, we were looking at doing meetings. We had an artist based out there at the time. She wanted to build our client base, so she let me go out there and have meetings. So I had to create all the meetings myself by emailing people. I had to find these emails, which can be quite a long process. And I ended up having a meeting at a creative agency that have Dior as a client. So they'll do a lot of Dior's advertising, or their creative. The creative agency will have like a set of art directors that work with a specific client. Kind of similar to how an ad agent or like say, I don't know, Head and Shoulders or Nike might have an ad agency that handles all their creative. They might not have teams inside their own companies that handle all of that. Yeah, and this is a shoot that kind of came about from me having those meetings in New York. Mm-hmm. This is just from me keeping in touch with them as well. So don't be afraid to obviously don't hound people every 2 or 3 days, but sending them polite updates of your work, of what's going on, of what you've been up to. It really doesn't hurt, and this is what came about from me. Just obviously, I'm not promoting myself now at this point. I'm promoting other photographers and artists, but you know, kind of just touching base with those people that I've met. And just keeping them in the loop about what we've been up to, and that you know, obviously they saw work of Charlotte's that they liked, and it led on to this. And then I've got one more. There's just one more slide of Charlotte's work. This is a very different shoot. Again, this is in New York. This is with Refinery 29, so the platform, that like big kind of online platform, kind of focused around women. And femininity, and they're very kind of forward, and I think in there, and I feel like they've changed the way that media maybe looks, and let's not get too political, but yeah, they're very feminine forward, and most of their teams are built and ran by women. Anyway, they a little bit like me and Richard were talking about, they had a collaboration with Gucci. So Gucci paid for this shoot to happen because it's promoted content. So the glasses, all the sunglasses are Gucci. And then they, you know, so because we're promoting basically a product of theirs, that they then paid for that shoot. And this for kind of like one of the first shoots I did with her that wasn't really as contrived, and it was because this was all completely street cast, that she just had to be not so in control of things, and sometimes kind of let other people just help her do things. And I think it's quite interesting to maybe, and I think I said to you earlier, Richard, that working with other people and also not being afraid to just go out and do something and let go and just let things happen sometimes is really important in your own work. Like they had like 4 people running around with a bag of cash and kind of confidentiality agreements around Bryant Park, and also the location in, I think it's in Central Park, where they did the Friends intro, you know, where they're all messing around in the fountain, Beth's Fountain, I think it's called. That we shot that around here, and you know, it's just like we had a hijabi woman as well. We had a woman, I think she was a Chinese or Korean lady who was there in a full wedding dress with a bouquet of flowers, having her wedding photos done, wearing these bright yellow Gucci sunglasses. The woman in the middle was 83. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. Very different. Again, I think just be open to trying new things. And don't be worried.
Sort of Diane Arbus sort of portraits about this sort of
yeah, a little bit.
You know, she had people kind of basically rounding people up for her, and then they would just come her way, and then she'd decide whether they were right for the shoots or not. It's quite an interesting way of just having people kind of ready and waiting.
Yeah, I can't remember if the creative had the brief that we got had any Diane Arbus reference images in it, but it wouldn't surprise me if it did. And then just to kind of finally round up, again, maybe kind of like talking about how your work can kind of influence something else, and don't be afraid to show everything or like show your work to everyone. You never know what they're going to pick up on. A little bit like with Richard's kind of final major project, and you know, the some of the fashion work that followed after his, then led on to his like Vivienne Westwood work. This is a guy called Ash Kingston we look after, and I'd gone for meetings. I had a meeting with an agency, and when he came and first joined the agency, he just had this diary like this. It was like an old notebook that he'd used as a diary, and he just scribbled in. And then he decided to, he always was taking, like, just always constantly taking pictures, constantly has a, I think he shoots on Contax actually. He always has a 35mm camera on him. And he just blurted out all these inkjet pictures into this old diary, and they're not well printed at all, and they're stuck in with masking tape, but just the way that it was put together and the energy that it had obviously really struck a chord with the person I was showing it to, the art director at this agency, which then led him on to working with Sandro pretty much like 2 or 3 weeks after. So it was really, that was a completely opposite of the Dior one, where it was just really quick and they picked up on it immediately. And again, it's really, I think, just speaking to people and just constantly, I don't want to say constantly, but giving them little nudges, little reminders of who you are, what you're working on. You know, you're just keeping in the front of their mind, because a lot people are very busy. And it doesn't hurt to just send your work through. Yeah. I don't know if you want me to say anything more. I feel like I've been talking forever.
No, it's perfect. And then this, obviously, Ash Kingston's now on the agency, and you've got.
Yeah, he joined us more recently.
Show the website quickly, because you've been quite heavily involved in designing that as well. And
yeah,
then,
so that was another thing I ended up. You guys can still see my screen, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So this is another thing that I kind of ended up working on while at the agency. We used to have a really just plain white and black website that kind of was fine ago was first started the agency, but kind of like since, like everything is very similar, and it makes a lot of sense to have a website on, you know, all kind of images on a white and black background, because that's like kind of quite often how they're best viewed, or people prefer to view them. But my boss wanted to do something a little bit different, so yeah, we ended up sorry, it's a little bit glitchy at the moment because of screen sharing, but she wanted to do something different, and I'd found an art director who'd done a photographer's website that had involved loads and loads of color, and each project had a different color. Obviously, because we were multiple artists, we couldn't do like different color for every project they work on, but each of the artists is associated with a specific color. So all their, I don't know if I've got any more now. I have artist cards as well. So when we go to meetings, we give out, they're not business cards, they're more like kind of postcard, slightly bigger than postcard shapes. And we tend to give them out because people can put them on their wall. And I'll have a look and see if I can find one for you in a sec. I can't think where I put them very conveniently. But yeah, they're all the same color.
Yeah, so the colours match the backgrounds of the artist cards as well.
Yeah, it's just it's
and you've got they've kind of got a lifestyle, sort of fashion lifestyle.
Yeah, we've got a real mix. So Kate didn't ever want Kate, the director of the company, she didn't she's quite a big believer in not having crossover, because then you have people that I think it's not always a bad thing if you and again, this kind of even extends to clients, I guess. I don't know if you've had this, Richard, but where you might think that you are not, it's getting a bit dark in here, isn't it? Tell me if you need a light on. But yeah, where you might think you're not someone's cup of tea at all, or like whether you don't apply to them as a brand at all, but again, you don't really know what they might be thinking or where they might be coming from. So don't be afraid to reach out. I can't remember where I was going with this now. I've gone off on a tangent that I can't remember about. But yes, she didn't want people to be clashing within the agency. Even though we do have kind of more of a fashion lifestyle vibe, not all the photographers, they all do something slightly different, and they all have slightly different styles. I mean,
yeah, you got John Tonks on there, who he came and gave a talk earlier on in the year,
and he's great. He's got a great energy about him. Does quite a lot of longer projects, which is obviously very different to I'm used to more working on the fashion projects, but we do get a lot of commercial projects in as well, which
I like the way you've used a kind of a sapling green sort of colour for John Tonks, because he's a sort of very outdoorsy.
Yeah. And then we had Johanna join a little bit later, and she's a beauty photographer, and a lot of her work is quite warm, but it's not classic beauty. It's a little bit kind of more, I'd say call it new beauty. Do you know what I mean? It's not super glossy L'Oreal stuff, I guess.
Yeah, brilliant. So
so
I've got a couple of questions to ask you, just about sort of going back into the working world, because obviously you've been on lockdown as well, like the rest of us, and you've all had to kind of just put everything, industry just shut down completely, didn't it? But things are now starting to sort of reopen, and you've both been on a couple of shoots, haven't you? But I was just going to say, if anybody wants to ask any questions, put them in the chat.
Guys, don't be afraid to come and say hello and unmute yourselves.
Unmute yourselves if you want to speak. It's
even if there's something,
not to have any noise before.
Yeah. So if there's something me and you, if you guys want me and Richard to both talk about.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
So just tell us a bit about a couple of questions. One was sort of how, if you got any tips that you would give to any students graduating now, things that you did that maybe the do's and don'ts that you would say don't do that, or that was a really good, trick to, or a way to approach things when you graduated. Anything that, I mean, for you, Fraser, it was basically just talking to you know, oh, you've buffered. I don't know if that's just my screen. You know, talking to Cecily in the digital darkroom was the way that you kind of got that link, and then other things came from that, speaking to James at the degree show. So are there any tips that you would say to students now who are obviously, we know we're all working online virtually now?
Yeah, so, yeah, I was going to say most of my kind of connections in terms of my working life, I guess, have kind of come through having face-to-face interactions. So, you know, hopefully if we do ever get off our screens and back into the real world, I don't think I've been into central London in God knows how long. Don't be afraid to go up and speak to people. If there's events on, like, you know, some people might not reciprocate exactly the same, you know, exactly the way you want, a little bit like Richard said, you know, there are definitely the kind of fashion crowd out there that might not be so well received to you walking up to them, and I've had that myself. But
like walking up to a fashion shoot, people don't often want to be disturbed in the middle of a fashion shoot, you know.
But for an event, for example, you know, kind of magazine events or you know, fashion week events, you know, and I'm not saying just about fashion shows, because, you know, they're most of the time quite invite based. But if there are any events going on, you know, just go along and see who you can talk to. You know, it's like me and Richard could probably go on all day about people that we've got mutual connections with, just because we've both been in that situation where we've had to talk to people and be like, oh yeah, I know that person from so and so because I met them here, and you know, it's like, huh?
Everyone ends up knowing everyone, and it's like, it's when you break it down, it's like a very small world in London.
For example,
like you were saying, like I'd just say go to like all the openings of like galleries or like mini shows or anything like that, because you can meet so many people there. And yeah, like you said about just not being scared to email people, because even it's very daunting. Like I even put off like self-promotion or like force feeding people information about what I've been up to or like new work and stuff like that, and portfolios. And yeah, it's, don't be scared to do that. But that's what
I was going to say. I agree with Richard. That's the thing that I'd probably touch on the most, or that is probably the most like kind of regular advice I've ever given to people who may not be repped by an agent or who are wanting to kind of like contact more people or build their network is, you know, just because someone doesn't reply to an email once doesn't mean they won't reply another time. It may just be that they're, you know, they may be busy, or, you know, they might just be busy in their job, or they've, it's not the right time for them to reply, or, you know, what you're doing might not be quite right for them at the moment. But if you do a shoot later on, then it might be perfect. They may have changed their, you know, creative direction. So again, you never know when you're going to be attracted to someone as a photographer. So don't be afraid to reach out to people. Again, I wouldn't say email people every other day being like, have you got my email? But, you know, kind of, I think it's fair to give people, like, if you send out an email, it's always, you know, I wouldn't be afraid of just giving them a gentle nudge and just saying, hey, hope you're well. Just checking to see if you got my work. And, you know, sometimes people will be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I was really busy that day, or so I haven't got back to you before. And then other people will just ignore it. But that's fine. You know, you will get that, but don't be afraid to continue plugging on, because, you know, you're not gonna, people aren't mean, but very rarely people are genuinely mean, because if they're not really interested in it, then, or if it's not something that they'd be interested in at that time, they probably just won't reply. So
it's about being kind of polite but persistent at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's, and then just touching on about payments, Richard.
Roger.
Roger in my household, and I can't get it out of my head. I called him Roger earlier. I've called him Richard earlier. That's too much. and I think being gently persistent is the way forwards. Obviously, if it gets to the point of, you know, like 6 months, then I take some action. But yeah, I think going in on kind of like go gun ho, full aggressive, only get someone angry on the other side and less likely to put you at the top of the list of payments.
And for you, Richard, you were talking about it being sort of getting to know all the assistants and all the people on a shoot and starting that way, becoming friends with all the new kind of generation of stylists and makeup artists, maybe.
Yeah, because I've always been quite chatty and kind of good at like just talking, and like I do get like, I find it so anxiety inducing, like going up to someone and being like, hey, like what you did for the internship, Fraser.
I mean, that was a rare occasion. I don't tend to just kind of run up to people. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
If you were at an event, I wouldn't just run into someone's circle and be like, hello, my name is. But you know, there are, you know, don't be afraid to kind of listen in on someone's, like, that sounds a bit creepy. No, I don't want to say listen in on someone's conversation, but don't be afraid to kind of chip in on a conversation that may be going on next to you, or you know, you might go to an event with someone and they're like, oh, I know, oh, there's so and so. Again, like, don't be afraid to kind of like chip in on the conversation and try and become a part of the conversation, because that's, again, you're not going to lose anything from that.
Yeah.
Do you still go along to private views? Do you still kind of do Thursday night private views and just sort of see what's out there and chat to people that way?
Yeah, I've done that
when you get time.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a few, like, there's sometimes like book launches or like little exhibitions that are quite like at the Photographers Gallery. There was Jack Davidson a few months ago. Well, probably like last year sometime now, so quite a few months ago. But there's always something going on. Like sometimes it's not always for everyone, like doing all the kind of like events or like fashion parties or mingling. Like,
yeah.
Sometimes it's not like my thing, like if I'm feeling anxious or like if I'm not like feeling up for like socializing or like I'm feeling more introvert, then it's not like ideal. Like a lot of people network through Instagram and stuff like that nowadays, and it is kind of weird to kind of, I think like social media, like touching on my Alone Together project, it's kind of like weird nowadays that we're so reliant on technology and we're so happy to kind of like message someone and be like, introduce ourselves online. Well, sometimes that's even even difficult, but in person it's like harder. Like I feel like it's even harder nowadays with like when we're so like on our phone, like so easy to type and easy to just ask people questions that way. I don't know, it's nice to kind of like test yourself and like talk to people in person, because I think if you put yourself in that position, no, it's hard to ignore you, and it's also quite I would respect someone to like like there's one guy who's like helped me out on a few jobs, who helped me out on the Vivienne Westwood thing, and like assisted on some smaller projects. So I've given like work experience for, who came up to me randomly on a shoot, like randomly at an event, and I was like, what? Like that was the first time anything like that happened. And yeah, it was really pleasant, and because of that I was like more drawn to kind of like help him out, because I felt like that was quite impressive for someone to have the balls to kind of go up to someone and be like, even if it's just me, like to be like, hey, I really like your work. Like
compliment goes a long way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, everyone actually just, you know, if someone comes up and says, I really like your photography, and you know, it's a nice thing to receive, isn't it? It's positive feedback. And now the shoes on the other side, people are coming up to you now, Richard, and saying, you know, I've really enjoyed your, you know, magazine recently.
It was funny.
Like, what?
It was at Alistair McClellan like book launching, and I was there fangirling Alistair, and then someone wasn't fangirling me, but someone came up to me and was like, what? But it was just like, it's it's nice, like it's flattery, like, but he was just like a really nice, and I just respected that someone could come up to you and like just be that confident. But yeah.
And are you having people assist you when you're shooting? So obviously if you're shooting film, that's quite a lot to sort of navigate your time
yeah,
around.
like a lot of like smaller projects, like a lot of the stuff for like document journal, if it's a simple like portrait job, I try and do try and do it all myself, which is probably I try and have too much control of everything. Like it's sometimes best to kind of like delegate and kind of like have an assistant or have an extra set of hands just to help you out, but not always. Like I'm either getting like a really poor rate, and especially if I'm being stubborn and shooting on film and like there's not like much budget at all, so I usually just end up working on my own, because I don't really like to have people work for me for free too much, like unless I can teach them or something. And I don't really do like I don't know, I think it's a bit wrong to kind of like have people interning for like me, I don't know.
Well,
I
that's
think it's a
very
bit
decent of you, actually. I think that's really commendable that you're not prepared to just sort of take free labour, but you'll do it if it's gonna help them, if it's gonna benefit them. Which I think is
if
really...
there's something I can give back, then for sure. But what was the question?
Well, we've got Ross who's asked a question actually. So, and if anyone else has got any questions, pop them in the chat, as they say.
Fire away.
So Ross wants to know how you navigate, which is what I was going to lead on to saying, is how do you navigate working in, graduating to working in the professional world? Any kind of do's and don'ts you might suggest? We kind of went through that a little bit.
Well, it's different nowadays with Corona. What were you going to say? Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, I can't remember what I was going to say really, but I think it is really hard to get in contact with people. I think it's a little bit hard to also, and it took me a long time to work out maybe the right person to contact. Depending on where I wanted to go. Like I was trying to contact people at magazines, and I had no, like, again, I was trying to speak to picture editors, but it was very difficult to kind of know whether I was speaking to the right person or not. So I'd say don't be afraid to email multiple people. Obviously don't be emailing like the financial like accounts people, asking them for an internship, but if you've got maybe like an art director or like and Richard, you're probably going to tell me to shut up now because now Steven's going to get loads of emails. But don't be afraid to email a few people. Even now, sometimes if I'm reaching out to a brand that I've not worked with before, or I don't have a relationship with, I have to try multiple people at that company. Because I don't know who's going to respond. I don't know who's going to take like kind of to it well. And also you do get people that are just more likely to reply than other people. I'm trying to think of any don'ts.
Yeah, don't know about don't stop or don't just not do anything. Like
yeah. I mean that's probably that biggest advice.
Yeah, you just got to keep on going, like keep on shooting if you can, like just keep being creative. Like it's a lot of hard work and it's not easy, like to get even, like I still, like even 5 years in, like I still think there's a lot of growth I need to learn and stuff. Like there's so much I can still learn and do, and like it's only a start of a career. Like just keep on going, and like I'm happy with that I'm still able to like do what I like love, and I just think don't be put off by it's a hard industry for sure, but just don't be put off by it, and don't be too hard on yourself because it's easy to beat yourself up about it, but just
Yeah, we were talking in a conversation last week, weren't we, about having, I hate that thing of people saying to you, where do you want to be in 5 years' time? That ridiculous question. And actually just living in the moment and doing your work here and now, and kind of, and often when you're freelance, you can be on this treadmill of, getting work or searching for work or having gaps of time where you've got no work and you're waiting to get paid. But and also there's no kind of weekends really, are there, when you're freelance? You don't sort of just get to take a couple of days. You can often work 7 days straight, 10 days straight, and then have a few days off. So, but finding chunks of time for yourself and trying to keep doing your own personal work in the gaps between when you're doing other editorials or any commissions, just to kind of keep that for yourself, to kind of retain that level of creativity for you, even if it's self-funded through some funds that you gather from your paid work, just to keep you ticking over, really, I think. Will has asked a question. He would like to know, you both touched on this earlier, there's often, can you read this? There's often a lot of pressure to say yes to every opportunity after university and also to work for free. How did you guys decide when to be more selective with the work you take on? You're welcome, Ross.
Yeah, I hope that helps. Let us know if you want us to elaborate any more.
Any more? Yeah. So that was the question from Will. So how did you kind of decide to be more selective about the work you take on?
Well, at first, we were speaking about this last week when we had a pre-meeting, and I was saying that literally after finishing at uni, I was working at Urban Outfitters, and then I forgot about that as well. I was working at Urban Outfitters, Ryda, and Wilhelmina. Then it was I had a lot on it, and I was taking on more testing, and then doing little editorial things and trying to say yes to everyone, because I was just wanting to keep myself busy. I feel like that's how I've just always been. I always like to be busy and kind of doing something. And it is hard to say no at first, especially if you think you can get something out of a project yourself and there is no budget and you're happy to put money in, because I'm always have to think about film and developing and stuff like that. It's hard to sometimes think if it's worth it that way around. But if you're not gonna get any value out of it, and it's gonna if it's a brand or someone, or someone was saying it's the exposure. Sometimes exposure is great, but if it's a little brand that's only got a couple hundred or maybe 1,000 followers on Instagram or something like that, it might be good for your portfolio, but I don't know, sometimes the whole being paid in exposure is a bit of bullshit. So yeah, I try just be select. It doesn't really answer the question, because it is just if you think you can get something out of it yourself, and if it's good for your portfolio, or if it's a brand that might need some imagery and you think you could do something in if you've got creative freedom, and yeah, if it's good for your portfolio, then yeah, go for it. But if it's something they want which is particular and there isn't any creativity and it's literally just a paid job, it is technically a paid job if it's the brief, and if they're being so strict about it, they should be paying you. So
I agree with that. I was going to say I didn't quite know maybe how to answer that question from a photographer's perspective, only because obviously the way that my personal career is kind of I've been in kind of a similar role since, or not a similar role, but I've been in the same company since pretty much since I graduated. But I can kind of speak maybe for the kind of photographers I look after, and generally, we kind of any job that we come in, any job that comes in, we always have a discussion with them about it. And the best way we kind of work out whether they want to do it, or this is when we're having a conversation with them. If there's any doubts, or kind of like they're like, I'm not sure. Firstly, I wouldn't really, I don't know, I wouldn't turn something down maybe at this point, only because I think you need to kind of maybe work out your own to kind of get an idea about what you want to do and what you like. But when you get to a point where you are kind of shooting regularly and you're enjoying and you know what you like, the best way to see it maybe is like a kind of triangle. So ultimately you want to be getting paid for the work you like shooting. You kind of got, you're like this, so this is where you want to be. And on this side, you kind of got jobs that aren't very creative but pay the money. And then on the other side, you've got jobs that don't really pay any money but are very creative and you're really into them. And if they don't touch on any of those points and they're not leading towards that ultimate goal of what you want to do, then maybe that's time to say, okay, maybe I'm not interesting.
Yeah, it is about holding a certain
amount,
holding a certain amount of your own integrity as well, and not just not just kind of filtering your your work to the point where you're just doing everything for everybody else and nothing for yourself, because you won't retain any of that, and you won't do a good job of those commissions anyway, because you'll just feel like you're on this treadmill of
you've got to see what's in your best interest. I think you've got to see what's in your best interest. And I was going to say, I can't remember I've forgotten what I was going to say then.
Go on, Richard. Richard was about to say something.
Oh, I was just saying it's good to know your self-worth, because I've had so many discussions with my flatmate who I've like done a job which I've undercharged myself, or like done something for like very little money, and because like I've been interested in the project, and my flatmate is like, you should be getting paid for this, and trying to like not do less and less like work for like a crap budget or something like that. I have to be like really interested in a project to say yes to it now, if there's like minimal budget, because like some of the portraits I've done for Document Journal hasn't been like a great deal of money, but I've been interested in the kind of like artist or something like that, and felt like I could create something interesting from it, and it could lead on to like more work in like musicians or stuff like that. So
if it's going to benefit your portfolio.
I think that triangle thing you said is really great to kind of like
it's a nice way of thinking how you're gonna do it. What I was gonna say is before I forgot is generally if you're not feeling 100% about it and it doesn't feel quite right, you most likely probably right. There's in most instances on most jobs that I've worked on, if it's been a little bit like not so sure about this, before we've kind of like thought about that whole triangle thing, and then you maybe go back to the client and be like, I'm not quite sure if this is right for me, or I'm not sure you've quite got the right person for this maybe. And that's sometimes quite a nice way to word it if you do want to turn it down, or you can say that you might be busy. That's also the probably the easier one. But if it
it's a polite way of declining without basically saying I don't like your brand, or I don't.
And if you need persuading to do the job, then and you don't feel like you've kind of you kind of reasoned with yourself in terms of the that kind of triangle thing, then I wouldn't do it.
I'm going to patent that little triangle. Get that.
I know. I thought you. I had a feeling that was coming.
A nice design with a coloured background, and then I'll give you a credit.
I can draw it for you if you want.
Give me a picture. I was just going to ask you also, both, to just talk for just very briefly about now that you've done a couple of shoots. Or Fraser, you've been on a set of a shoot, haven't you, this week?
Yeah. No, I haven't been on set. I haven't been on set, but I've been in the background doing
So good planning.
The production.
So this whole minefield of coming out of lockdown, which we're all kind of a little bit fearful or whatever of, you've both had to kind of start this transition back into the working world. So I just wanted you just couple of minutes each just to explain the kind of measures that you've had to take and what you would suggest to students or graduates who are now seeking work. What would be some good tips that they could do in kind of, you know, planning to sort of work in the world at the moment? What could they prepare for? You have some paperwork that's signed and stuff.
I think that's a difficult one again, because I think it's a hard question only because we're still at the start of it. I haven't actually been on set, so I can only kind of give experience from the preparations that we've had to make. But I think, you know, if there are any kind of certificates in there, I think there are things that's starting to exist, because I work with a producer who said that they've been trained in working on set during or like for COVID, like specifically they had some form of training, and I don't know where that was accessible. But you know, if you are looking to kind of like shoot more and more, and you maybe are going to be working in a studio setting, in a studio, like for example what Richard did at Ryda, or assisting, maybe seeking out that training might be something that you could do, because saying, you know, that you're COVID trained or you know, trained in new ways of shooting, that's definitely going to be able to boost your attraction, I think, to anyone that you might be emailing or trying to approach to get assisting work. Again, don't quote me on that, but that's I believe there is some form of training out there. And also just being aware of all the measures, I guess. I mean, I can make accessible we've got a set of company guidelines, which again will change and will be changing on a shoot by shoot basis, but I can share that with you guys if that might be helpful for just to kind of look at what guidelines we're aiming to stick to when we're shooting at the moment, in terms of, you know, the stylists have to wear the makeup artists have to wear PPE, and we're not allowed to have steamers on set. I'm aware they may be things that might not be quite relevant.
Clothes. They're not allowed to have a steamer on the set.
No, because it can because it creates steam and condensation. It can potentially harbour the bacteria.
Wow.
You know, like food has to be individually packaged, and yeah. So I mean, again, the guidelines I've got might be a little bit extra for you guys who might be just starting out and doing your own shoots and putting your own shoots together. But yeah,
I'm a friend who's a makeup artist, and she's had to sort of attend an online course and then get a certificate to prove that she's COVID safe.
Yeah, Emma's actually just popped in the chat, which is really helpful. And actually, this is actually probably better than me sharing my document, because we're kind of going off of the Association of Photographers. They've got guidelines on their website as part of their union, I believe. Emma, quote me if I'm wrong, but they've got all COVID guidelines on the Association of I think it's, I can't remember what it's called.
The Association of Photographers.
APA, basically.
AOP, the Association.
Yeah, AOP or APA.
All right.
And you can have a look on there. And they've got plenty of guidance, which is probably going to be more up to date than what I can share with you.
No, but it's still useful to know, because you've been planning for it as well. So, and then you've done a shoot this last week.
Yeah, I did one on Tuesday. I was just gonna try and find, because I had to sign like I think it was like a COVID declaration form or some sort, just to kind of like say that I'm basically just saying that I promise to like abide by the kind of like regulations. I didn't realize about the steamer, but there wasn't a steamer on set, which it does make sense, because it would just spread germs around, and it just it's condensation and but I'd say It is a weird one because we don't know what the situation is. I'm not sure if like studios will be taking on extra staff at the moment, but it's worth messaging any studio if you're interested in doing that. Same as with production companies as well. I've did like a bit of production assisting as well, which is really helpful. It is a bit weird. It depends on the set and like the scale of the production. On our job, we had a production team who spent like 45 minutes before we arrived, like sanitizing the set, and also we were shooting mainly outdoors in an outdoor location. So there is ways to shoot around that, like you can't go into people's homes and stuff like that. It's better to shoot outside. There are like modeling agencies are still doing like model tests, but it's mainly outside and like doing the 2-meter distancing. There's lots of social distance shoots. There's Zoom shoots if that's your aesthetic as well. There's lots of ways around it, but it's still early days, so it's quite hard to, I'd say, buy your gloves and masks and hand sanitizers as well. Like,
hand sanitizer on a chain or on a necklace, and you're probably one step closer to being good to go.
Exactly. Add it to your list of kit that I told everyone to get gaffer tape and Sharpie key rings and things. You now need hand sanitizer and masks. Yeah. Interesting. I suppose everybody's learning on the job, aren't they? Everyone's kind of learning as they go, I would imagine. Yeah, brilliant. Oh, look, Gavin's popped up. I think what I'm going to do is end the recording and then we can open it up if anybody wants to stick around. It'd be nice to see Emma Sage as well. Show your face.
Yeah, feel free to come say hello. If there's any, if there's any questions that you guys didn't really want to share in the group, like.
If anybody doesn't want to be in the live recording, that's totally understandable. So don't all disappear. We'll just stop the recording. But thank you both. That was absolutely brilliant. Thank you.